Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Diamond Kings, the best YouTube baseball show in the cybersphere. We're now past the All-Star break as far as the Major League Baseball season goes, and it's on to the second half of the season. Last week, we had a lot of discussion about predictions, so this week we're going to talk a little bit about what went on in Cincinnati. Had a great home run contest, a really competitive game. It wasn't that close at the end, but there was some exciting action there. And then this weekend is Hall of Fame induction weekend, and I'm decked out in my Craig Biggio hat, my Craig Biggio jersey. I'm going to be there in Cooperstown this week. He's obviously in with Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, as well as John Smoltz. So we'll talk about their legacy and a little bit about what they brought to the game. Maybe if we have a chance, look forward at what we think is going to happen in 2016. There's going to be an interesting ballot that year. Again, my name is David Whitlock from Houston, Texas, and joining me this week is some of our real good veterans. We're going to have a great discussion tonight. We'll go east to west, so we'll start at Arkport, New York with Kelvin LaPierre. How are you, Kelvin?
Good. Dodging some rain up here, too.
It appears to be raining everywhere except in Texas, where Leroy McConnell III is up in Dallas. How are you today, Leroy?
Remember when we had the floods, David? And we were saying, oh, God, please give us sun. Well, we got sun now. We're asking for the floods to come back again.
Boy, it has been brutal down here. A couple weeks ago, I went to an Astros game where I almost got flooded out of the stadium. We were driving in almost flooded water to get there. But like Leroy said, down here in Texas, it's been clear the last couple weeks. We're recording on Sunday night. We're all anxiously awaiting Sunday night baseball from Los Angeles/Anaheim, California, where our man Lorenzo is. But it's raining there, and he said it very rarely rains there. They haven't had a rain out in over 20 years. Lorenzo, how are you doing today? Welcome back. And what do you think about the rain out there?
The rain, it's crazy. I don't know what this is. There's like some like water coming down from the sky. It's weird. I haven't seen rain in a long time, but good to be back.
It's great to have you. No doubt, we all live in different climates. That's the great thing about this show is we get a good geographical representation of the country. We've got Lorenzo representing the West Coast. We've got Kelvin representing the East Coast, and then Leroy and I are holding down the Central. So we'll get started right away. I want to talk about the All-Star game this week. It was a really great week. It started with a good futures game that had the United States beat the world, which is kind of random. But then the home run contest, which had some different rules this year. There was a time limit, and Todd Frazier, the hometown kid, was in it, and he had to have so many home runs within a minute and a half, and he was able to do it. I didn't watch it myself, but I saw some replays. And then, of course, the game happened where you had Zach Greinke go out with his scoreless inning streak. That ended with the first batter with Mike Trout hitting a home run. It went 1-0, then it went 1-1, and the American League for the third straight year kind of piled it on, 1 here, 2 runs there. And with that bullpen highlighted by some Royals and Twins, was able to shut it down. So I'd like to get you guys' reaction to All-Star Week. Did you watch the game? Did you enjoy it? The second year in a row, Mike Trout has won the MVP. You know, we talk about Miguel Cabrera being the best player in the game, maybe Giancarlo Stanton, who is hurt. But is Mike Trout the premier player? Is he the guy they're selling after last year's Derek Jeter situation? And it's been so long since we've seen Lorenzo, and he represents the Angels. Let's get his reaction first. What did you think of the game? Did you enjoy it?
Maybe I'm just a hater when it comes to the All-Star game, but ever since interleague play started, I just can't get into it. It's not as exciting as it used to be because you see these matchups happen every week, with them always being an interleague series. Before, it was a special occasion to see Angels going against Dodgers, Angels going against Giants. Now it's a run-of-the-mill thing. I did not watch it. I watched the Home Run Derby. That was entertaining to watch. That's actually better than the game itself. But overall, do you know what? Mike Trout, yes, he is the face of Major League Baseball. He's young. He's a good-looking guy. He puts people in the seats. He hits for homers, and he plays the game the right way. So he's a great player, and we're honored to have him in Southern California.
Yeah, no, it was great. Absolutely. He plays the game the right way. And to do like he did for Zach Greinke and take a guy who hadn't even been scored on it, and he pitched another gem today. He hadn't been scored on in weeks. To put it in perspective, I heard a stat that the last time Zach Greinke allowed a run, the NBA Finals was not over yet. The Golden State Warriors weren't even champions. How long ago was that? But Mike Trout, no problem. Parked at the right field bleachers. Was very impressive. Leroy jumped off. He jumped back on. We should get to him before he jumps off again. Lorenzo reflected a little bit about the All-Star game and how it may not mean as much as interleague play. What did you think about it? Did you watch it? Were you entertained by it? Any other thoughts?
I heard it. It was on, but I heard it. I didn't actually physically watch. You have to remember one thing. What team did Zach Greinke play for when he first started out?
He was
a Royal.
Royals, yeah, that's right.
So what he was doing us a favor. He was helping us get home field advantage for this year's American League World Series. So, thanks, Zach. Quite exciting weekend for the Major League Baseball. And, you always talk about Mike Trout. You can't make this stuff up. For him to get a cycle, for the first at bat, last four, second, that's amazing. He's a special player. Cincinnati did very well, as far as, hospitality. It was good that Todd Frazier won the home run derby because that's the only highlight they're going to have for the whole season. And, I'm glad the American League won. Like I said, that helps my mighty Royals in the second half. 20 games above 500, best in the American League. It's no fluke. Ned Yost knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, so. It could be. It is interesting, and a lot of Los Angeles Angels are doing a lot of scoring and hitting off of pitchers from the Dodgers. So that was an interesting aspect of it. The home field advantage we've debated before. We'll save that debate for another day, whether it should be that way or not. So we'll go to Kelvin. What did you think of the All-Star game? Did you watch the home run derby? Did you particularly enjoy the game or any other performances?
I watched almost every game there was available this week for All-Star weekend. I watched the All-Star game. I watched the home run derby, which had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. There's a couple tweaks I would make to the home run derby. I would have it National League players face off against National League players. I wouldn't have a ranking system. I'd have American League versus American League. That way when it gets down to it, because you all know now in the All-Star game, if it ends in a tie after 9 innings, it ends in a tie. They don't play extra innings anymore. I'd like to see the home run derby be a run. The winner from the whatever league get a run to start the game. Or that be the tiebreaker if it ends in a 9, if it ends in a tie after 9 innings, because they no longer do that after the Joe Torre debacle in the All-Star game where they were pitching pitchers that were already in the game. They were going to run out of pitchers, so they changed the rule. It ends in a tie, which, if I'm not mistaken, you have something on the line called the World Series home field advantage. You can't end an All-Star game in a tie if that's the case. So, but the time limit, putting a 4-minute time limit on that, made it so much faster. Maybe it was like an hour faster. Instead of getting over at like midnight, it was over at 11. But the 4-minute time limit just made it so much more exciting with that 45-second one timeout per round. Frazier just dramatic. Every round he was dramatic. Came down to the last minute and he needed to come back from like what seemed insurmountable, but he managed to do it. And it's going to make the home run derby. You're not going to be a guy who can hit long, high-fly home run balls like a Giancarlo Stanton, if that's how it's going to be, because you can't throw the ball. You can't get the next pitch until the ball's landed. So it's going to have to be like line drive players. You're going to have to learn to hit it out on a rope instead of high, long fly balls. And Todd Frazier averaged 36 pitches per at bat in the home run derby. He got 36 pitches every round. So that just shows you got to get your pitches in. And Todd Frazier's not a high-fly home run guy. He's a line drive guy. Yep. And that's what he hit to win it, was a line drive shot over the, 15-foot wall that they have in Cincinnati, I think, and right out there. So it just made it more exciting. It didn't allow them to have to nitpick at what pitches they went at. They just went out there swinging, which I thought was a great baseball got that right on the head. Just a couple tweaks I would make for that. And then I watched the AAA All-Star game the next night. Yep. And New York Yankee prospect Kevin Roller, first baseman, could be Mark Teixeira's replacement. They hit about the same. They got the same amount of home runs. RBIs are the same. He's hitting 246. Teixeira's hitting 243. It's about Teixeira's season. Comes up clutch in the top of the 9th inning, down by 2 after the National League had taken over the lead in the bottom of the 8th on a 2-run homer. He comes up clutch with a 2-run RBI double to tie the game, and then they ended up winning it on the next play. So that was good. But back to the Big League All-Star Game. Big League All-Star Game was great. Congratulations, Mike Trout, becoming the first player to win back-to-back MVPs. First player ever to hit for the cycle in your first at-bat in every All-Star game you've been in.
That'll never happen again.
First leadoff home run since like 1986.
Big
And
Bo
that was, I believe, was a Bo Jackson when he was playing for your Kansas City Royals there.
1989.
89, yep.
So another thing that goes for the Royals, but the only Royal to show up in that All-Star game, I'm sorry to say, was Lorenzo Cain. The only one to show up and perform well. The bullpen pitched very well for the American League. Clayton Kershaw, I posted on our fan page, was another time where he got in the game and seemed to choke in a high-pressure situation. I know a couple of guys got upset with my prediction on that, but I'm sorry. The pitches that were hit were 0-2 pitches they weren't softly hit. They were hit hard. That's exactly what happens in his playoff performances. He gets through a couple of solid innings, then he gets 0-2 and he starts getting rocked, gives up 6-7 runs earned. But another thing about Kershaw, though, if you haven't been paying attention to him this month, he's given up 1 earned run all of July, and he had another dominating performance today with 8 innings,
Saturday.
2 hits, something like that, no earned runs. So I think he's given up 3 runs, but only one of them's been earned all of July. But even with this month, Zach Greinke's still my AL Cy Young Award winner, with him decreasing his earned run average from 139 to 130 today.
Yeah,
so
ridiculous.
I'm sorry. Greinke's my MVP, probably the AL MVP and an NL. I'm sorry, the NL Cy Young, and could be the NL MVP if he keeps up this rate. I mean, I think he's going to be your first dual winner for the award in a long time.
Yeah, well,
Hey, Dave, I'm going
last
to
year,
quick.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, got to give a shout out to your New York teams up there. Jacob deGrom, 10 pitches, striking out the side, amazing. You know, you got Harvey, but your ace is deGrom by far. And he and Chapman, you said that the Royals didn't do much. Well, blame Ned Yost for putting Hosmer or Moustakas in, facing a guy that was throwing 103 miles an hour. Not going to have any success against Chapman. Throwing, 13 out of 14 pitches over 100 miles an hour? You know, that was a showcase.
Yeah.
I can't believe somebody would strike out. American League struck out 15 times and still won that game. That's crazy. So there was some crazy pitching out there.
Yeah, it was great to watch. Yeah, DeGrom, it was certainly his coming out party. He set what a record last year, a rookie record for most strikeouts to start a game, like with 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. Completely dominant. I mean, Aroldis Chapman, for my money, I've been to a lot of baseball games, but he's the most dominant pitcher I've seen in a single inning. Just a random outing that the Reds had against the Astros, he just came in just like he did in the All-Star game. I'm like, I don't see anybody gets hits off this guy. It's like you put your bat out there and hope it hits it. And he might be able to trademark it, which might be a future show. But I want to go to the next subject, which is the franchise four. So they announced the franchise four for each team. So I'd like you to reflect on your franchise four. We'll go to the same order that we did this time. So we'll start with Lorenzo, and the franchise four for the Angels, I believe, was Salmon, Ryan, Vladimir Guerrero, and was it Mike Trout was the fourth one?
Yes, I think Mike Trout was on there. I think it's a little bit too soon to have him in there. The one that I would probably insert instead, taking it old school, would be Jim Fregosi. He was the face of the Angels in the 60s and early 70s. Mike Trout, not just yet. Also, I don't know about Vladimir. I know Vladimir won an MVP when he was with the Angels. But the Angels, to be honest, they really don't have a storied history, so there isn't a lot of guys that are pounding the door to get in there. The Angels usually get the players that are good about 5 years before they get them. For example, Don Baylor, Reggie Jackson, Dave Parker. They got all these guys that are past their prime. So the big four that they announced, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, three of the four that we'll talk about, Astros, Rangers, Angels, are relatively newcomers, and then you've got the Yankees that we get to Kelvin last, which is like, there's probably four on that team that would be the franchise four on any of the other teams, just given the history of those teams. So for the Rangers, let's see, we had also Nolan Ryan. So three of the four that we're going to talk about today had Nolan Ryan on the team. And then you had, let me see, I'm bringing it up now. You had Adrian Beltre, Ivan Rodriguez, and Michael Young as your other three. What do you think about that? Was that the right call? Was there anybody that got overlooked there, Leroy?
Well, David, I wrote an article about this about 2 years ago about, who was Mr. Ranger.
Yeah.
I had Nolan Ryan for Mr. Ranger and Angel. I mean, when he was an Angel, he struck out 383 batters as an Angel, won Cy Young, and threw a no-hitter. Mr. Ranger, I mean, he's polarizing here in Texas after he played baseball. He saved Texas baseball by bringing in the new owners. By far, of course, if you come down here, it's Nolan Ryan way as you're walking into Ballpark of Arlington. Pudge would be second, of course. Everybody wants to disrespect Juan Gonzalez. He was a fixture here, like him or not. Josh Hamilton, but they got it right on the fourth one. Michael Young.
Yep. All-time
epitome, and when he was asked to move to second base so Elvis Andrus come over, he didn't like it, but like I said, it was the betterment of the team. He's consummate, and thank God he's back with the Ranger organization. So Ryan's number one, Pudge, I would say Juan Gonzalez, and Michael Young. Beltre.
Yeah, Beltre.
He's been on so many teams, but he has done excellent here. He was part of 2 World Series down here, but he doesn't have enough time to be in top 4.
Yeah, it's tough when you think about who has been with the team recently versus the long term. And I think for the Astros, which I'll get to last, it was difficult to separate, that 2000, or let's just say that 1995 to 2005 era from the previous eras, because in my mind, they overlooked some of the previous eras and they just went with the Killer Bees and Nolan Ryan, and that was it. So Kelvin, New York Yankees had to be one of the most difficult ones. And you got, obviously you've got Babe Ruth, you got Mickey Mantle, you got Joe DiMaggio, you got Yogi Berra, you've got Whitey Ford, you've got Derek Jeter, you've got Roger Maris, Lou Gehrig, Mariano Rivera. How do you decide between these? So they eventually went with DiMaggio, Gehrig, Mantle, and Ruth, which you can't argue, but was this the right franchise for, or should they have looked at some more recent guys that have contributed to the recent generation of success of the core 4, etc.?
Well, you got to look at it this way. Before those players came around, what were the Yankees doing? They hadn't really instilled that winning tradition yet until those players came around. The DiMaggios, the Ruths, Mantle, Berras. I mean, the Yankees were one of the laughing stocks until that generation came around. They weren't the greatest. They weren't known for winning championships. They were known for finishing in the bottom of their division. They were known as, it's hard to debate who. You could do a decade for the Yankees for the rest of the time they're around. You could do it based on a decade just on the Yankees. They're one of the most storied franchises in the league. They go out and get who they want. They pay them what they want because they can. Is it right? No, but it's baseball. They pay the luxury tax for that.
What about Johnny Baseball?
To leave Mattingly off that list?
Yeah.
You make a bigger case for Derek Jeter not being on the list. If you're gonna leave Mattingly off, you gotta leave Jeter off. You're gonna leave Jeter off.
Mattingly is the only one. He's the only superstar that didn't win. He's the only superstar that never won a ring.
He was the base for a good 10 years.
Yep.
You have Thurman Munson that's not on that list either. Guy dies in a plane crash.
He may be the third or fourth best catcher. If you go to
I mean,
Joe Dickey and
it's
Yogi
it's
Berra,
hard to debate if they're right or wrong. I mean,
Corey Posada.
for the generation of fans that was probably written for, yeah, that's the right list. But if you want to get young fans into the game, like is baseball's thing, which I'll bring that up later, but that's the right list to make for the readers that they're going to get for that type of column. I mean, that's not a list that you would expect a kid of 19, 18 years old, unless he's a history buff about baseball, to read and understand. Leaving Jeter, Rivera, the core four guys off that list, I'm fine with it. It's something that's going to happen. There's just too much history in Yankees baseball to say that that's a wrong list. It's just too rich in history. When you think of New York Yankees, there's one thing you think about, and that's the DiMaggio speech on July 7th where he walked away from the game in his last game.
Lou Gehrig.
Or Lou Gehrig, yeah.
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig, yeah. You think of that every time. I think of that. First thing that comes to my mind
Yeah, no, he has to
is
be on the list.
that speech.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to put that on there. Mickey Mantle comes to mind with a home run race that he had back in the day. Babe Ruth, the infamous trade from the Boston Red Sox to the Yankees, he has to be on that list. Yogi Berra, what, 10 World Series rings?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be on there. So you can't doubt any of these. There's no way to argue against any of the four they have for any of these teams, but maybe Mike Trout being on the list in LA. He hasn't really been there that long. He's proven he's a franchise player just on his performances alone.
And Lorenzo, did you have a question about the Yankees at one point?
No, he did mention Donnie Baseball, and to me, Donnie Baseball was the Yankees in the 80s. He was the man over there.
Yeah, he talked about it a little bit. You know, it is tough. They had some tough times there, and Steinbrenner wasn't really doing a good job running the team. I don't know who's running the team, but Leroy, what was your thought that you were like?
DiMaggio is on there for the number 56, period. He's on there.
Yeah, right. And he won the MVP that year over Ted Williams, who hit 406, which I believe is still the last guy to hit over 400. Now, it's an embarrassment of riches there. So to keep us moving, I'll go to the Houston Astros. So the Houston Astros franchise four was, of course, Craig Biggio, going to the Hall of Fame. Jeff Bagwell, who maybe we'll talk in the next segment, I think should be going to the Hall of Fame. Nolan Ryan, who kind of put us on the map in the 80s, was part of the 1980, 81, and 86 playoff teams. And then the fourth one I'm not so sure about is Lance Berkman. Now, if you look at Lance Berkman, he is in the top 5 or 6 for all-time switch-hitting home runs, of course, most of his time with Houston. But I would go with Jose Cruz. If you look at their numbers, there's no question that Lance Berkman had better numbers. He had more home runs, a better batting average, all that. But Jose Cruz was really a transitional guy in the franchise. From the late 70s to the late 80s, he was the guy. He was the mainstay. You know, he may have made one all-star team, but he is a franchise guy that I would have put on that team easily, no question. I mean, Jose Cruz, he's still around. He was a coach later. He's still around the team now as an advisor. Lance Berkman was great, but he was never the man. When we were in the postseason, it was because of Biggio and Bagwell, not Berkman. So that's my criticism there. I'll say my dad thinks that Jimmy Wynn of the 60s and 70s was a guy that should have been there. So, again, Houston Astros have a lot of guys that were pretty good, but I don't know if any of in fact, I know for a fact, none of these four would have made like the New York Yankees franchise four. There's no question that, again, the Yankees franchise four, second team, would probably be ahead of many of the other franchise four, particularly the expansion era teams like the Angels, Rangers, and Astros. So we're going to transition segments from the All-Star Weekend to the Hall of Fame, and what better way to do that is talk a little bit about Pete Rose. Pete Rose made some appearances in the All-Star game. He was one of the Reds franchise four, which is, of course, no surprise. I was a little surprised that Johnny Bench got the nod over him for the all-time greatest living four players, if you think about it. But what did you guys think about Pete Rose's appearance in the All-Star game? Was it too much? Was it not enough? And of course, I'm going to ask you to give me some thoughts. Does this change anything for the Hall of Fame? There's a new commissioner. He's been talking to the new commissioner. He's trying to forge that relationship, but Pete Rose is Pete Rose, and he's not the biggest relationship guy. Just to mix it up a little bit, I'll start with Leroy this time, and who always has opinions about Hall of Fame eligibility. What did you think about the Pete Rose appearance, and what do you think about his chances for the Hall of Fame?
I think it was just right. It was not more. It was perfect. He's in his backyard. He needed the fans behind him. You couldn't have done it anywhere else for Rose. It's time for Rose to go out there and go ahead and get his name back out there, despite what we've learned in the last 4 weeks about him and the gambling while he was playing. It's time to go ahead and put him on the ballot and let the Hall of Fame voters decide. So we can go ahead, if he's worthy of getting in, let them decide. Have to decide on these PED players. It's been 26 years. We've all waited. He's an old man. If he gets in, should have no problem with him getting in. If he does not make it, no one can complain because he's been crying because he was not on the ballot. Put him on the ballot and let the voters decide whether he gets in or not.
Yeah, many times those two situations are tied together. They think he's not in the Hall of Fame because he's banned from baseball. Well, he's not on the Hall of Fame ballot because he's banned from baseball. And that's just a rule they kind of made up, or didn't make up, but they just said as a ground rule, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Pete Rose, anybody that's banned from baseball can't be on the ballot. They cannot reinstate him to baseball and still put him on the ballot and just say, okay, we're a new rule, put Shoeless Joe on, put Pete Rose on the ballot, let the writers decide, who have proven to be relatively harsh when it comes to personal character issues that the PED era is to be judged. And so then he would have his day in court. He would have, the writers, I don't think are big friends of his. They've known him for decades, but his accomplishments speak for themselves. So Lorenzo, what do you think about this? What did you think about Pete Rose's appearance, and does this change anything with regards to reinstatement of the Hall of Fame?
The coverage that Pete Rose got and the praise that he got, it was accurate. It was good. He got just enough of what I was looking for. But my problem was, if he's there and they were honoring the 4 greatest players, where was Barry Bonds? Because with Barry Bonds, he's an Inland Empire native, so he's from my neighborhood. You would think that he would have been there as well. Because if you're going to praise Pete Rose with all his issues, then Barry Bonds should be there as well. But of course, there was no mention of him. There was no sight of him. But he should have been there. But the coverage and the praise that Pete Rose got, it was appropriate, especially in Cincinnati, where he's from. It was good to see him out there. That hair dye that he was using is just way too much. That was over the top. I couldn't believe that. Even if he went back to the 1970s bowl haircut, that would have been better than what he was doing now. But it was good to see him out there.
Yeah, no question. I think they did the right amount. That you have to give him, at some point, you're hurting the game if you ignore his presence and what he meant to Cincinnati, both as a player and manager. And, did he make mistakes? Absolutely. Should he pay the lifetime price? That's what we're debating. But to put him on that list of all-time Reds greats, which of course is going to focus on those 1970s Rig Red machine, was more than appropriate. So Kelvin, what did you make of the Pete Rose appearance, and do you think this changes anything?
Well, let me just say, 2 of you know how I feel about this whole situation. I don't think he should be in the Hall of Fame, at least while he's alive. After he's dead, we could talk about it some more. Especially with the light of the Outside the Lines report saying that they did have knowledge of him gambling when he was playing. I'm sorry. He lied to baseball. He still won't admit to it, even though we have all this evidence. No, you're not getting in the Hall of Fame as long as you're around. After you pass away, I've said this before, go ahead, go in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he should have the enshrinement like all the other players do. I don't think he should be allowed at Cooperstown to give a huge speech. He shouldn't be inducted by somebody. He should just be put in after he's passed away and stuff. As far as what happened in Cincinnati, sure, that's great. But last time I checked, when you're banned from baseball, you're not supposed to be in a big league ballpark. You're not supposed to be doing any of that stuff. But yet he's still there. So that leads me to believe that baseball is going to take the step to put him on the ballot in some way or another. Is it going to be this year, next year, 5 years down the road? It's going to happen sometime soon if they're allowing him in the ballpark, even though it's only an all-star game, and it's in Cincinnati. So congrats to him. Congrats to the Cincinnati Reds on hosting a perfect all-star weekend. I'm just not the biggest fan of somebody who cheats on the game the way he did. So for him to not admit to it, if he admits to it and copes up to it like everybody that has taken a steroid, besides Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, go ahead, admit to it. I will forgive you if you admit to it. I've forgiven A-Rod. I mean, I still hate the guy, but I've forgiven him because he's on my team. So when he admits to doing something wrong, that's when people will forgive him, and that's when people like myself will be okay. You're sorry. You're finally admitting it. Here you go. Here's your shot. We'll put you on the ballot. Admit it.
Yeah, I think he kind of mishandled the steps all the way. It seems like he'll deny everything up until they have evidence and say, I didn't bet on baseball. All right, yeah, I bet on baseball. No, but I never bet on the Reds. All right, yeah, I bet on the, once the evidence comes out, if he would have come out in 1980, whatever it was, and just said, hey, I had a problem. I had a gambling problem. It was something that affected me. It was wrong. I did things I shouldn't have done. I've sought addiction treatment, etc. I've cleared the air. I understand my misgivings. I throw myself on the opinion of baseball and the commissioner, and however it goes, that would have been different than the way he handled it. All that being said, I do hope. I think he deserves to at least be on the ballot. I don't think he'll get in if he's on the ballot. I think there's just those baseball writers are so shrewd. But wrapping this up, I do think that it was right to have him. I kind of agree with Kelvin. It's weird to have him banned from baseball, but he made an appearance a couple of years ago for a Cincinnati reunion, and now he's making this. It's kind of like, well, we'll bend the rules for certain situations, but not. Either you're banned or you're not. As far as I'm concerned, lift the ban, let him be on the ballot, and then let the writers decide. And I don't think he'll get in if they do that. So let's move on to the Hall of Fame. So this weekend we have 4, which is the most they've had in a while. We have Craig Biggio, John Smoltz, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, all being inducted. I'm going to be there next week, so check out our blog at Reading Between the Scenes, sports-kings.com/readingbetweenthescenes. I'm going to put a lot of content on there. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions to kind of wrap up the show here. One is thoughts on the class in general, and if you had to make one pick to start a Game 7 of a championship series, would you go with Johnson, Smoltz, or Pedro? All of them had some postseason success, some more than others, and go from there. So thoughts on this class as well as that one prediction, and we'll go with Lorenzo first this time.
Well, first off, have a good time in Cooperstown. I've been there before. It is a great experience. The whole community just revolves around baseball. Every cafe, every restaurant is just pure baseball the whole time. It's a great experience. I've enjoyed it when I went out there. As far as the class go, Craig Biggio, why is he going in? I don't get it. He wasn't that good of a player. Nobody would ever want to go see, I'm going to go see Craig Biggio play. No, yes, he had 3,000 hits. His big claim to fame was his longevity, and he got hit by the most pitches. That's not Hall of Fame material. He's not a Hall of Fame player. He's really not. He's a good second baseman. He was scrappy, as they like to say. Well, scrappy usually means you're not that talented. So I want to see talent. That's what the Hall of Fame is all about. Yes, he's the gritty underdog. Everyone cheer for little Craig Biggio. Yay. Not a big fan of his. If I had to choose one player to start, got to be Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez in his prime was unhittable. He brought electricity to the game. John Smoltz, he was a solid player. He was good, but I wouldn't go out of my way to go see John Smoltz. Randy Johnson, yes, I would make the extra trip to go see him pitch. But one game to decide the fate of the world, Pedro Martinez all day long. As they call him, Pete Martin? Pedro Martinez, the guy all the way.
No, not bad observations. Of course, I'm going to disagree with you about Biggio. I mean, 3,000 hits and being clean is something that he can hang his hat on. And
allegedly being clean.
Allegedly being clean. All right, we've had debates about that before. He's also 6th all-time in doubles. So he's really good at doubles, and he played 3 different positions and won some Gold Gloves.
Yes, he's really good. That's not great. I want to be Hall of Fame as great players. He was a solid player, yes. But so was Gary DiSarcina. Gary DiSarcina was a solid shortstop.
I'm about to mute you now, but that's okay. We appreciate your opinions like that because that's what we're here to talk about. Let's go over to Kelvin next. Your thoughts on this Hall of Fame class and what you think it means in terms of these guys getting in, as well as your pick. We have one vote for Pedro Martinez. What do you think about these 3 guys?
Well, you can tell right now that I'm not going to pick Pedro Martinez, and there's one reason you know why. Not because he shoved Don Zimmer down
right
the game. Not because he got rocked by the New York Yankees because his manager left him in too long in the postseason game. I'm going to pick Randy Johnson because he pitched for New York, was dominant in Seattle, was just on badly teams in Seattle. I mean, did they make it to the postseason? Yes. They had Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, and such. But he goes to Arizona and wins the World Series in Arizona. Comes to New York. He has that one incident with a camera guy in New York City where he shoves and breaks the guy's camera. Pitched fairly well in New York. Had an injury-prone year one year. Then retired. Now he's going to the Hall of Fame. Going in as, I believe, a Diamondback.
Yep.
It was down to Arizona or Seattle to go in as strikeout guy. I'm always going to take that type of guy. He's 6'6", 6'4", something like that. He's god awfully tall guy. Not a guy I'd want to meet in the street. Yeah, some tall, lengthy guy. I'm going with Randy Johnson. I've seen him pitch in New York. Just a guy I liked. Kind of had a mimicking pitching style as him growing up as a kid in high school. Like the guy, nothing against Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez is great. Just he was on the Red Sox. I can't pick a Red Sox. I'm sorry. John Smoltz. I grew up in the era where John Smoltz was coming out of the bullpen as a closer, so I can't really debate him as a starter. If I had to pick him as a closer, I'd pick him as a closer. But I know he's a great starter when he was a starter. I've watched old games of him pitching as a starter, but I'm still going with Randy Johnson. Congrats to all of them going in. Dave, have fun. I've been to Cooperstown 4 or 5 times. It's a great time. Jeff Bagwell does. Yeah, we're getting into that later. Biggio, the only reason I think he's in is because of the 3,000 hit number.
No question.
Not that he was a bad player, but it's like Lorenzo said, scrappy, average guy. It's not somebody going to Houston you went to go see on a day in, day out basis like you do other players like a Mike Trout, Alex Rodriguez, a Randy Johnson, players of that caliber. But congrats to him. He got the 3,000 hits. That's a number that the only player who's not in is Pete Rose when you get to that number. So congrats to him. He deserves to be there just on that stat alone.
Great job, Calvin. That was excellent commentary. Guy knows his stuff.
Absolutely, no question. He's in because of 3,000 hits. Let's face it. If he ended up at 2,800, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But 3,000 is magical. He had to hang around a while to get it. But of course, I think he deserves it. And I'll counter you guys' 2 opinions. And I think he was a guy that we would come to see. He was a face of the franchise for 10 or 15 years, which again doesn't mean you're in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of faces of franchises like Gary DiSarcina. That was the clear Angels face of the franchise for 4 years or something. But anyway, let's get to Leroy. What are your thoughts on this Hall of Fame class? And do you think that and which of those pitchers do you think is the best one you go to in a critical situation in the postseason?
David, this is an excellent class. Better cherish this next week, and I hope you have fun.
Thank you.
2016, we got 3 of the most dominant pitchers in our era going at the same time. You have someone from 6'10" to 5'9".
Pedro, yeah.
It's incredible. Enjoy it because 2017 is not going to be like 2016, or 2016 is not going to be like 2015. Excuse me.
Right.
But Randy Johnson, that's my guy. I mean, the simple fact that 6'10" and throwing heat, 4,875 strikeouts. All he has to do is grab his ball, and what he did to Kruk that one year in the All-Star game, all he had to do is throw it over your head and freak you out. That's mind games right there. You know, seventh game of the World Series, who did he beat? He beat the Yankees with the help of Schilling. He's the guy. Period. So Randy's my guy.
Yeah. Now, of course, Randy Johnson played for the Astros too. I remember 1998. That was a great couple of months.
He did good. He won 20 games, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was like 20-2.
I think he won. We acquired him at the deadline, and he won like 8 or 9 or 10 games over the last few months. But I'm just going to throw out John Smoltz just to balance this out, because as an Astros fan, I appreciated what he did against the Astros. The Astros had some great teams in 97, 98, 99, and we would always go against the Braves in that first round. And who would be there but John Smoltz? And he would just shut us down with nasty stuff. It wasn't as dominating as Randy Johnson, but it was consistent. And he was able to bury that sinker slider in the dirt, get bad swings. We just weren't up to par. Then to transition, of course, to his postseason performances, which he then faces in the postseason in the late 90s. I mean, sorry, in the mid-2000s, the 2004 and 5 season, he was a closer, and there he was again, dominating us. I believe it was John Smoltz in the Game 7 of that 1991 World Series that went head-to-head with Jack Morris. They went 10 innings, and, of course, they got the win for the Twins. So there's no wrong answer to this, but I am going to lean towards I'll throw John Smoltz out there because there was a time at which, in certain games, that he could be that postseason dominant guy. Well, we've run out of time.
Hold on, I need to say something. I need to add something really fast here.
Go.
Okay. When it comes to Randy Johnson, this is the criteria that I use. If you've been traded and you've been on multiple teams, you obviously were not that good. Because if you were that good of a player, no team would ever let you go. Randy Johnson, Expos, Mariners, Astros, Yankees, Diamondbacks, Giants, 6 teams off the top of my head. So he obviously wasn't that good. Because if he was, nobody would have gotten rid of him. Simple logic. Sorry about that.
He was not a.
Wait a
He was
minute.
a free agent. The year he went to Astros, he was a free agent that summer.
Yeah, they traded him to the Astros.
He was
So-
not Randy Johnson, who we knew when he was at Expo. We didn't know who Randy Johnson was until he was in Seattle. All
He
knew
went to
was-
New York in the tail end of his career.
Well, when he was in
And
New
then he
York,
went to the Giants.
San Francisco, he
One
was
from
ahead.
together with the Giants, yeah. So what I just heard you say, Lorenzo, was if you're on one team your entire career, that means you are great.
Uh-oh.
And of course, that is Craig Biggio, the only player in this class who
Set him
leads
up.
a single team. Hey, I'll tell you what. Next week we're going to talk about the 2016 ballot because Leroy and I got into it a little bit before the show. We talked a little bit. Ken Griffey will be on the ballot. Trevor Hoffman, Jim Edmonds. You've got some repeats. Jeff Bagwell. I'd like to have a debate about him. But we did run out of time today. Hey, great show, guys. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun week. I appreciate all your well wishes for the Hall of Fame. I'm going to take a lot of pictures. I can't wait to go. It's going to be a good time. So for Kelvin, Leroy, and Lorenzo, we'll see you guys next time on Diamond Kings.